God dang it, you're right. I was like, I stick my finger in there. I want to taste what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Because bourbon, to me, is one of the best things you can put inside apple pie. Oh man, that's makes some good
apple pie.
Apple pie and a good bourbon together. Man, there's nothing better. And a warm fire in the winter. That's
American. That there is American. Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Find out more about their fine rustic furniture at logheadshomecenter.com. Hello, I'm Jim Shannon.
And I'm Mike Hyatt.
And this is the Bourbon Road. And Mike, this is your road trip part 2.
Part 2 of it, yeah.
Yeah, so we did 3 distilleries last week.
Yep.
This week we're doing 3 more.
Yeah.
Kind of excited to hear about these because you brought me back some bottles.
I did.
Yeah. Man, I'm the big winner here. Well, you're the big winner.
Well, trust me, I was the big winner. Trust me, you know, we're going to come over to the house and we're going to try every one of those bottles that I got.
Absolutely.
I gave you 2 ryes out of all the picks, and especially the one we're going to drink today. The owners of that distillery, they were like, "Hey, we know your co-host is a big rye whiskey guy, and we'd like him to have a bottle of this." So, I brought it back to you. Beautiful bottle, right?
It's a beautiful bottle. Comes in a tube, a lot like the A.H. Taylor tube,
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think some people are trying to do that today. More beers are coming out like that than whiskeys, but some people are putting those in those tubes.
Yeah.
Why did E.H. Taylor put it in a tube like that?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that, but they've been doing it a long time. So
was it to keep the bottle from busting, maybe?
I think it was just to set it apart as a higher quality kind of product. It gave it that look like the care was taken in packaging, and Colonel Taylor was very proud of what he did.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the fellows over at Rocktown are just as proud.
Oh yeah, so that's what we're drinking today is a Rocktown single barrel rye whiskey, cask strength. It's 125 proof. It's got some dark caramel to it. It's 35 months old, and I think that's when you were talking about it before we started. Probably because of that Arkansas heat down there in the summertime.
Yeah. So we're not drinking this because it's our favorite or it's the best. It's just one that we chose to have to sip on. Just
something to sip on while we're talking about the old trip down that Bourbon Road, right?
Right. So we don't want our other guests to feel like we singled out Rocktown, but we just grabbed a bottle and said, "Hey, let's sit down with this one."
Yeah.
Well, because I like rye.
So instead of saying cheers to you, I would say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. That's right. This is our Christmas show. This will release on Christmas Day.
Yeah. So if you're out there listening to us, sit down and grab yourself a bottle of bourbon or some rye whiskey or whatever whiskey you like to drink, and sit down and listen. Give us a listen. While everybody's opening up stuff or everybody's busy making that Christmas dinner, sit down and listen to this episode and hopefully you enjoy it. We definitely appreciate our listeners, I think, supporting us throughout the year. This has been our first year, really half a year for me, but I think it's been a great year.
It has been a good year. We've grown a lot. We've got a good core following of listeners, and I think our format is pretty solid. We've got some ideas for next year, some things we might change up a little bit, but I think that we've had some great guests, and I'd like to do a show, Mike, at some point where we sit and we look back at the past year and we say, who we had on and what were the bourbons, what was our favorites and stuff. We haven't really planned that episode, but I think that's something we ought to do.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we'd get a whole entire year under the belt.
Yeah.
And do that. That would be our year in review right there.
There you go.
After 52 or 54 episodes.
Yeah.
I always get those weeks mixed up in a year.
Well, this is episode 37, so we're not too far off.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Well, Mike, let's go ahead and get to this rye, not this bourbon, but this rye.
It's rye whiskey.
Let's talk about it. Cheers.
Cheers.
Merry Christmas. Wow, that is that stuff packs a punch. What did you say the proof on it was?
125.
125. Wow. And this is a single barrel rye, very dark. This reminds me of the color of like a Old Forester 1910.
It's you'd almost think it was double barreled or something,
right?
But that Arkansas heat, a kind of cool thing about this, and we'll talk about that in an episode, that they play rock and roll music to their bourbon, and it's just thumping.
Yeah. It's called Rocktown.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So this is now, do they use smaller barrels or use normal sized barrels or?
Yeah, they're using 53, 35, and 15-gallon barrels.
So we don't know which one for
I'm not
this
sure
particular.
what this is, but it's got a sweetness to it too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, this has got, for me, it's like dried plums, kind of dark. The oak is definitely, how you get a lot of the oak and the tannins on the back.
That dried fruit there is like almost, man, I want dried plum, maybe a date or something like that. It's definitely sweetness. To me, this is almost like that Sagamore. But I tell you what, it's got some sweetness to it for me, and I like that.
Yeah.
I'm not the rye guy here, but I'd definitely sip on this.
It's definitely got some cloves to it. Reminds me a little bit of that a glazed ham, clove glazed ham kind of, that's been really cooked.
Oh yeah.
A lot, because it's got some char. It's got some oak. A little bit drying, but I think it's good.
Now this was non-chill filtered, so maybe that adds to it a little bit.
Kind of hard to believe that this is only 35 months old, but I guess that southern weather just...
Yeah, if you ever been down to Arkansas, it does get nice and hot down there. That'd be north of Texas almost a little bit. Once you get up in the Little Rock area, that Oklahoma, like if you drew a straight line across there, but still, that's a beautiful whiskey.
What do you think about the finish on that?
It's not drying, like I would think it would be, like a rye. It's got pepper on the back end.
Got a little bit of a hug. The flavor punch doesn't stick around a really long time. So
no,
I would say it's a medium finish. But there's, the alcohol, for being 125 proof, I don't think it's overpowered by ethanol.
No, I don't, not at all. The nose on it definitely isn't like that.
If I were to drink this blind and somebody were to ask me to guess at the age, I would probably go definitely higher than 3 years.
If it was Kentucky, you'd definitely think that, right?
Yeah, not knowing where it's from. Well, you're looking at the color and tasting it, it definitely seems a lot older.
Yeah, maybe they have that advantage. Like, you think a Scotch, it takes, how long does it take to make a good Scotch?
That's probably for the Scotch experts to answer, but Scotches definitely age a lot slower than bourbons do.
Because their weather's different.
Right.
So you go down south and you try to make some whiskey down there, and it'll take a while. So, yeah. So that's what we're drinking today.
All right. Well, I did want to mention something, Mike, before we get into your first interview, and that is send out another invitation to our listeners to pop into Facebook and visit the Bourbon Roadies. It's our closed Facebook group. I think we're up to about 60 or 70 members now.
And there's some good conversation going on.
Some good conversation going on in there. So, come to our Facebook page, the Bourbon Road. Go into our group, the Roadies. We'll ask you 3 quick questions, and that's just to make sure that you're of drinking age and that you know where you're going to. That's about it. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'm really enjoying that. It's starting to take off now. It was a little slow in the beginning, but I think it's picking up.
I think people will be surprised that we have listeners in there, or roadies that are from all over the world. We got a couple guys from Australia now, and they like to comment on stuff. Obviously, we got some people from Louisville, Kentucky, but we got people all over the United States, people out of California, people from Texas. So come on in there and let's have a conversation.
And we're pretty active in there, so you'll see us. Yeah,
every day, almost every day. We try to be in there.
Yeah. So, Mike, who do we have for our first stop on this week's road trip?
Well, I thought me and Vivian were going to get on the road that next morning.
So let's backtrack a little bit. So last week on the episode, you finished up in New Orleans.
We finished up in New Orleans at 7-3 Distilling, and then me and her left that day, and we actually, you'd asked me last week if I'd went to Felix's, and we did go to Felix's and had some oysters. You know, me and Vivian are big oyster fans. And then we met some old Coast Guard friends that are stationed there in New Orleans. And met them for dinner and ate at Acme Oyster House. Before we went out, though, we're in our hotel bar there. Hotel St. Marie has a little bar restaurant, and I saw this guy wearing a Purple Heart hat. So I bought him a drink, and he came over, and like two veterans would always do, we started up a conversation and talking about each other and our lives. And turned out the guy owned a dang distillery up in South Dakota.
Go figure.
As soon as I said, hey, I got a bourbon podcast, I'm a co-host on a bourbon podcast, he was like, really? So Eldon Nygaard, he owns Clay Turner Bourbon up in South Dakota. And next morning I got up and I interviewed him. The cool thing about this guy is he is a combat veteran. And we sit down and drank his bourbon that he had in a wine bottle because he's going on a cruise for his daughter's wedding honeymoon. I guess the whole family was going. But we sat down that next morning in the restaurant there. It was a little noisy, so the audio wasn't that great, but I felt it was important to get this American hero on our show and talk to him and get his bourbon out there. So if people are driving out to South Dakota, they're going out to Sturgis, South Dakota, they're going out to Wyoming, they're going out that way, they need to stop by and try some of his juice.
So there may be a little bit of noise in the background, but we'll make sure we clean up that audio up enough so people can at least understand what's going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, let's hear it.
Let's do it.
All right.
Hey, this is Big Chief from the Bourbon Road, and I know I told all of our listeners that the next time you'd hear me is be in Texas, but as many of you know, whenever you're on a trip and you never can tell who you're going to run into. And last night, me and my wife are sitting in a bar in downtown New Orleans, and I see a guy wearing a hat that has a Purple Heart on it. And I told the bartender that, hey, can you, I'd like to buy his drink for him because he's a Purple Heart recipient. And so she bought his drink, and he came over and thanked me for buying his drink. And we started up a conversation like two military veterans probably would anywhere. And I was lucky to find out that he owns a distillery. So today, this morning, I'm sitting down with Eldon Nygaard, South Dakota state senator.
Yeah, retired.
A combat veteran of 34 years.
Yeah.
Shot down 4 times in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Flew 1,000 missions. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And Purple Heart recipient. Eldon, I'd like to thank you for your service. The thing about Eldon is Eldon owns a distillery up in South Dakota, and you actually have a bourbon up there.
Yes, we're having bourbon for breakfast incidentally. I don't always do that, but
well, that's a good way to start the breakfast, right?
Breath of fresh air, though, when you smell that bourbon.
It is.
Yeah.
So your bourbon is called Clay Turner
Straight
South Dakota
whiskey. South Dakota straight bourbon whiskey. Yeah.
And the name comes from the 2 counties. One where your distillery is.
That's in Clay County. We distill it, and we have a farm, a 240-acre farm in Turner County. We go back over 100 years in that county, and we raise our own wheat, rye, bourbon, barley. It becomes bourbon, and then corn. All of the ingredients that go into our bourbon are raised on our farm in Turner County.
Now, this bourbon, Clay Turner, is really a 4-grain bourbon.
Yeah.
It's got 52% corn.
Our mash bill is 52% corn, 24% wheat, and 24% rye. And the malting barley that we use in the process of fermentation is our own single row, non-genetically modified malting barley that we raise. We obtain that seed, very rare seed, from a seed repository up in North Dakota State University.
That's pretty awesome that you're doing everything in house and you're really researching it. But you've already had a storied life, right?
I've done a few things.
You did a few things.
I've been in a few rodeos, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. Let's taste this. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'll tell all my listeners that when you swirl this around the glass and you look at the legs on this, it's got some legs on it for a 2-year-old bourbon. It definitely tastes sweet. I can taste that wheat in it, but on that back end, there's a little bit of punch to that rye whiskey.
Yeah, so there's a little pepper to it and caramel. Get some caramel out of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good bourbon for a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Now, is your plans to let it go beyond 2 years in the future? Or?
Our bourbon process, this has just begun. We wanted to see if we could make a good bourbon. I think we proved that we can. It sells on the shelf in our grocery stores, liquor stores back in South Dakota at anywhere from $39.95 to $49.95. So they like it in South Dakota. We're going to experiment it with. We've got a new aging barn. We're converting a bandstand that we use for entertainment. We're going to totally enclose it with a roll-up like garage door, so we can still have the band in the center of it, and we'll be able to put a couple hundred barrels around the back. Sure, so we'll have some rock and roll aging of these of our bourbon in the future.
Hey, I've heard all kinds of people do different stuff, and heard people raise plants and music. So why not raise some bourbon up with it, right? This is a true small batch, only 2 barrels, right?
Yeah.
You use 53-gallon barrels out of Springfield, Missouri.
Springfield Worldwide Cooperage, sir.
Well, I think that's a pretty delicious bourbon. So Stone Face Distillery here in South Dakota, after Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah,
that's what it's named after. So, well, Eldon, I appreciate you coming on today with me and sitting down here. I know you're a busy man. You're going on a cruise with your wife and family. Congratulations on the wedding of your daughter.
Well, thank you.
I know that's always a festive time and stuff. And we'll see you on down to Bourbon Road.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike.
Well, Mike, it was kind of a fortunate event there for meeting up with Eldon in the hotel.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, it just those the gift of gab. I always say is, I think when we met, you said, "Hey, you got that gift of gab," and sometimes it benefits me.
Opens a few doors, I think.
It sure does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a very interesting guy. Definitely been around for a while, and he's got himself a distillery and served his country, and sacrificed for his country too.
Oh yeah. They got some wine up there for people to taste too, though.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, maybe one of these days we'll get up South Dakota and we'll stop in and say hey to him and do a tour and hang out with him for a little bit, and that'd be nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mike, who do we have next on our trip?
Well, so me and Vivian, after we talked to Eldon and we got on down to Bourbon Road, and we're driving over to Shreveport. My son's stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base, and he's on a B-52 bomber crew there where he works on the B-52s. And it just so happened that Shreveport's about halfway from my mom's house in Texas. And that's Tyler, Texas is halfway point. So I found a distillery there, obviously, so we could have some lunch together. I went to the distillery at Kiepersol. They are a large vineyard in Texas. They grow all their own grapes, and they got a large ranch there. They kind of one-stop shop. They got a bed and breakfast. They got a distillery. They got a winery. You got all kinds of stuff. I was just shocked. A bed and breakfast so you can stay the night if you want to have a couple drinks. It's just a kind of a great place, halfway place to meet. So I sat down with the owner of the vineyards and the distillery, Marnell Durrett. They've been open since 2013, and they have some great bourbon.
Do they really?
Yeah. And they named it after Jim is their master distiller, Marnell's husband, and his dad was a World War II bomber pilot.
Oh, cool.
Kind of fits in with my son, right?
Yeah, yeah.
His name was Jimmy, and he's got a great story about him and stuff. And the whole time he's in World War II flying around in his bomber, he had a bottle of bourbon with him. It was more for trading if he got shot down or if he needed some stuff over there, he could trade it. But at the end of the war, you'll hear a story on this podcast. He did trade that bottle of bourbon to a woman on a beach for a record. Comes all the way back home from the Pacific and puts that record on. You can imagine the excitement the whole time not being able to hear that record. And man, has to be some good music right here. And he puts that on that old record player, that vinyl record, and it was blank.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but they got they got 2 expressions of bourbon there. They got some other stuff too.
And the name of the distillery is?
The Distillery at Kiepersol.
The Distillery at Kiepersol. Okay. Yeah.
So they got Jimmy's bourbon, and then they got Jimmy's 100, which is 100 proof. They do all 53-gallon barrels. Maybe in the future they're going to have some 30-gallon barrels. It's all single batch. It's all made by them. Probably one of the most impressive distilleries I've ever been to, where I can tell, everything's right there. Their bottling line's right there. Their rick house is right there. Everything is they're there. Yeah. And their bourbon's 4 years old. It's a good Texas bourbon. I thought a lot of it. And I got a great story.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. You're in Texas. I hear Weller grows on trees in Texas. Is that true?
Not that I could find. And I actually, a couple people was like, hey, can you stop? Give me some Wellers in Texas. And I think maybe in Central Texas, but I was over in East Texas and we stopped at a couple places and I didn't find a single bottle, nor did I find any good bourbon really. Me and my son went into a couple places and I'm like, where's all this bourbon at? Where's your bourbon at? And they'd have I probably had a bigger collection than some of those liquor stores have. But hey, I tried, gave that old college try and struck out, but I still got to visit a great operation. They are debt free, meaning they're paying for everything out of their own pockets for this operation. And I love that.
Yeah, it's good to hear about a distillery that's done it, the smart way, I guess. A lot of them say, you want to make a little money, you start with a lot of money and you start a distillery. Then you end up with a little money. So, I guess to have a distillery that's been able to stay debt free the whole time and pay their way, that's good. That's awesome.
I mean, they got other businesses and stuff, and I think that's how they're helping support this distillery, but they're not taking any money from anybody else, and they're living that American dream.
So the distillery at Kiepersol.
The distillery at Kiepersol.
Let's hear it.
All right.
Hey, this is Big Chief coming to you from the Bourbon Road. And so we left New Orleans yesterday morning and we went over to Barksdale Air Force Base and dropped some bourbon off to my son. And now we took a 2-hour drive over to Tyler, Texas, and we're at the distillery at Kiepersol. And they're on a winery.
Yes, this is a wine estate.
And I'm with...
Hi, everybody. This is Marnell Durrett with Kiepersol. I'm speaking on behalf of my husband today, since this is the guy's side of the world at Kiepersol, the distillery.
So you're the winemaker.
I'm the founding winemaker.
Owner.
Yes.
So you're the owner of this distillery, though.
My sister and I own it. Yes.
And your husband's the master distiller.
And he's the master distiller.
But your husband's out doing some ranching today.
He is with the cows today.
Hey, sometimes we got to do that, right?
Yes.
So I always like to get straight to the whiskey. So what do you have for us today? What's the first pour?
Today we only have 2 products in terms of bourbon and whiskey right now. And that is our Jimmy's 90 and our Jimmy's 100. There's a really cool story as to how the 100 gets developed and blended. And the Jimmy's 90 is our standard, and it's what's in the marketplace.
Now, who's
today.
Jimmy?
Jimmy is my husband's grandfather. So sadly, he passed away in October 24th. He was 97 years old.
That's a good long life, though, right?
Oh, he had an amazing life, amazing guy. Learned so much from him. We have 10-year-old twins. And from the time that they were born until the time of his passing, my kids got to see him once a week and got to play dominoes with Papa and learn about all kinds of fun things. And he would tell great stories. And and make he'd pick on my son a little, and Papa would say, "I'm not letting go till you say calf rope." So
Jimmy was your bottle has a pair of old aviator glasses on it. So Jimmy was an aviator.
He was a torpedo bomber pilot, and he flew off of aircraft carriers off of the coast of Okinawa in World War II. And I guess it was about 2013, 2012, 2013, and we went to go have lunch with him. And that particular day, we'd already started the distillery. We'd already working on the vodka, and my husband talked my dad into let's get the bourbon side going, and we committed to making a whiskey. And we showed up that day and we said, "Papa, we're going to start making whiskey." And his response was, "What?" And I said, "We're going to start making whiskey. Boy, do I have a whiskey story for you." And it started like so many whiskey stories. I mean, of his war stories, not whiskey. This is the only whiskey story he told. And it started with when I was deployed. And he said, when he says he has a story, we know to sit down, it's going to take a minute. So we did, and it did take a minute. But he told us about, and if you have any 90-year-old relatives, 90 plus, 80 plus, 70 plus, it's fun to listen to history from your relatives and your friends and your family. And I happened to catch a little bit of this on my iPhone and recording him, and came home and played it for my dad. And he said when he was deployed, they were asked to bring a bottle of Jack or a bottle of Jim. They were asked to bring Wrigley's peppermint gum and as many cigars as they can get their hands on. And he said when he heard this, and his arms were frail, he goes, "I was madder than a hornet," because he thought that the commanding officers were going to haze them, like take advantage of their rank so that they can get some whiskey. Turns out it was a base in Oklahoma, is what I understand. And when they left Oklahoma, or when they got to Oklahoma, they said some of the fly guys that brought the stuff, "You guys need to take your ammo bags, because they were issued 4 ammo bags, but since they were pilots, they weren't going to be doing hand-to-hand combat and didn't need to fill them all with ammo." They said, "Take your silk scarf, wrap it around your bottle of Jack or Jim, stick it in the middle of the bag, put the gum around it, put the cigars on top, and hang that bag on your seat in the cockpit." And they said that bag will become your barter bag. Those items hold more value in the South Pacific than American dollars or cigarettes. So if you get shot down behind enemy lines and live to tell about it, your bag will likely live too and could potentially save your life. So it was an awesome story. And when I got home, told my dad about the story, and he's like, "That's it. We'll name the Bourbon Jimmies." And I still get goosebumps telling the story because I heard that. And he did trade it to a pretty woman on the beach on his last flight. And it was kind of like a story because he said, one of the things he said was he'd be flying at night and he'd try to stay awake and his mind would drift and he would think, our tour might be coming through, he would think about that bag of bourbon back behind the seat. And he goes, "I'd just pull the bottle out, I'd unscrew it, and I'd just sniff it. And then I'd screw it back on, put it back." So, but he traded it for, this woman was on the beach and she had records that she was selling. And he could not wait to get the record home and play it. So he traded the whole bag, got the record, got on the ship, got home, and had nothing on it. He goes, "I was so mad because that bottle of bourbon flew with me."
To me that resonates home because both me and Jim, both being in the military, we both say that even today, a good spirit, a good whiskey is still tradable overseas. And sometimes, you're not supposed to have that in country these days, or they frown upon it. But I guarantee you some guys' mamas send some bourbon to them. And they still get traded today. So this bourbon right here
this is the 90 that you're tasting.
Is 90 proof.
Yes.
I get a little of, and our listeners probably going to laugh, but I still get a little bit of that licorice, a little bit of horehound in it. Corn, like you said, corn forward.
It's really corn forward, and Jim loves rye style. He likes the spice. Some of his favorite. They say there's like a progression. I'm still the wheated. I like the wheated bourbons, but the Jimmy's has a sweetness, and Jim says he wants to pull the sweetness from the corn and not so much the wheat, where that wheat gives it a little body, but he likes the sweetness and the spice.
Let's taste this. I'm already been tasting it, but cheers.
Cheers. It's 4 years. And every bottle that we produce, and you're sitting in here in the barrel room with us. Sorry, that's winemaker talk. The rack house.
The rack house, yeah.
So actually, it's still part of the distillery. But whenever we have to make more bourbon, my husband wants it in those barrels as long as it can stay there. So if the distributor calls us, we'll get an order in, and he'll call the guys like, we got to come out of the vineyard, or we've got to come out of the pasture, or wherever it's time to bottle. They're going to come by and pick up barrels tomorrow. Wow. Bottles tomorrow. Yeah. So it stays in those barrels as long as it can. So we are a single batch. This is literally single batch. So it's kind of neat. We were in the market yesterday, and I can see some bottles, and I'm like, wow, I want to do a tasting of what it tastes like if it was bottled a year ago, and it's the same label, and it might still have, now we might be getting up to 5-year, 6-year already, but it's, especially when we blend the Jimmy's 100, we know we can maintain that 4-year age, and that's what we're working on.
Now, is there any plans in the future to age it longer and go to like 6 or even a 10-year-old?
He wants to do. We're going to keep some of them for 20 if we can.
Maybe do a bottled bond.
Absolutely.
Maybe old Big Chief will get a bottle of that, man. Yeah. I'll tell you what. I've already made some friends for life here in Texas because I'm a big old Texas boy. So, so the 4-year-old 90 proof bourbon from Jimmy's, I think it's an excellent taste on it. I get the sweet. Oh yeah, I love it. I love Lady Bourbon. Come on, look at me. I look like I love bourbon, don't I? I do get the sweetness from the corn. I get that pepper on the back, a little bit of maybe white pepper. Yeah. I get some cloves in it. Clove and allspice is what I'm picking up right now. Those bacon spices somebody hasn't smelled. Me and my wife were driving down the road the other day, and I had said a bourbon had some nutmeg in it. And I was telling her, hey, write these notes down for me. And she's writing them down. She's like, you don't even know what nutmeg tastes like. And I was like, sure. She's like, when have you had nutmeg? And I was like, well, I'll put some on a apple pie inside my apple pies I make. And she's like, God dang it, you're right. I was like, I stick my finger in there. I want to taste what it tastes like. Yeah. Because bourbon, to me, is one of the best things you can put inside apple pie. Oh man, that's makes some good apple pie. And a good bourbon together. Man, there's nothing better. And a warm fire in the winter. That's American. That there is American. So you guys got this Jimmy's bourbon, and then how long ago did you said you started in 2013? 2013, and we started. People come here for wine tours and distillery tours, and it's like the big question is, why are we in this little micro distillery in the heart of a wine estate? So it really was just a farmer life. There's a saying that a farmer always makes a plan, and we're growing grapes, we're making wine, and that's our passion. Our passion is to grow something, produce something, and have it firmly founded in planted in a sense of place. So grapes were a niche. It's a niche crop essentially, and shifting to distilling. It all started with
vodka. So how can we take these grapes, the wine that we cannot compete with on the global market in terms of quality and price? When we say can't compete, we had Zinfandel planted and know that we make a fantastic white Zinfandel. However, in the market right now, you can buy white Zin for $4.99 a bottle.
Yeah.
And white Zin drinkers aren't going to pay our $10, which is the best price you can get on the market for. So that's not a competitive product. We can't compete in the marketplace with that. What can we do with that to take it further? Our cost, the glass, the bottle, the foil, the cork, we've put $4.99 into that package due to scale of economies before we even put the product in. And the birth of this distillery was, how can we take it from a non-competitive product to a competitive product, which was, let's take it and make vodka out of it. And that's what opened the doors for distillation. And vodka is the door opener, the gate. It was the gateway to finding a spot for my husband's passion. And I noticed you looked at established 1922.
I did.
So
I'm guessing that's Jimmy's day.
That's his birth year.
More.
Yes. And Dirk's, which is the vodka that we produce, his is 1924.
I put that 2 and 2 together. So the next bourbon you got for me is Jimmy's 100 proof.
This is a cool story too.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So you see that plaque on that barrel right there, Jimmy's 100?
Yep.
So here's what we do. And this is so fun. There's so many bourbon buffs, and we've got friends that trap. They've got, their names on barrels in Kentucky, and they come down. They're Texans, and they come down here and just talk Kentucky all the time. And we said, why don't we get all these guys together? So they have a night where there will be like 25 or 30 guys, and they sit, and Jim will pick. My husband will pick 3 or 4 barrels, and he thinks that they're pretty good. And let's blend a 100. And these guys will have teams, right? So they'll sit down, and it's all the bourbon buffs that we know that want to come. So if you want to come join us for a blending party, you're now on our list of bourbon buffs. So they'll show up. We've got food set up, and it's kind of a guy thing. So we'll do some fun stuff on the wine side for all the ladies, but the guys get together and they have a blast. So Jim gets them set up with all kinds of blending stuff, and they blend together and they talk together in this whole team. So it'll be like a table of 8 guys, and have 4 or 5 teams, and they'll put these blends together. And then they'll have a blind vote on the blend. And it's so funny whenever Team A actually votes for Team B's blend.
Yeah.
But it really makes it fair. It's fun. They take ownership on the product, and it's kind of an inclusive blending process. So that's how 100 is born. So 100 will come out of 2 or 3 or 4 barrels that are selected, and then the ratios of that blend. And we do a very limited production on that. It's once that's out, and
So you think that's how many 3 or 4 barrels, and you blended those together to
at those ratios.
At those ratios,
and
yeah.
then the rest of that will be cut with water for Jimmy's 90.
So we got this Jimmy's 100. We got this Jimmy's 100, and I get definitely a different nose on it.
Cinnamon.
I get that floral, some citrus, maybe some tangerine, actually, maybe a little tangerine.
Oh, bright. Yeah.
Yeah, that nice refreshing smell you get.
Man, that's nice. It's really opened up too.
Isn't it amazing how you can let a whiskey sit in a glass for just a little bit, and it'll totally change it.
Same with
Same as wine, right?
I know. I'm talking to a bourbon guy. Don't get excited about wine, Mornell.
Now, hey, I've drank a lot of wine in my life. If you're married, you're bound to break out a bottle of wine. Especially my wife's a nurse, and she's like, "Hey, there better be a bottle of wine after this shift right here."
I can't wait to meet your wife. So she's here, right?
She's here.
That's awesome.
Another great bourbon by you guys. I think very floral on that front end. Still got that sweetness to it, but on that back end, you still know it's a rye,
corn.
Right?
And
not that burn from like really deep rye, but it's definitely a 100. It drinks like a 100. Sometimes you'll have a 90 or 100 that drinks like a 120.
Ooh.
And then sometimes you'll have I've had some 120s that drink like a 90.
Is that what you call your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite is Weller's Special Reserve. All of our listeners, it's a weeded bourbon. Everybody's called me a big sissy if they want to. Not many people would probably do that. So if you bore our listeners more to call me that, I don't care. It's good bourbon. Good bourbon is good bourbon. So my question for both of you is, what was your first bourbon?
My first bourbon was it was Jim Beam and eggnog.
Eggnog. Oh my God.
So it was at Jimmy's. It was Jimmy's house, and my husband says, "Yeah, eggnog. You don't put anything in eggnog other than Jim Beam." I'm like, okay, I guess that's what eggnog is, because I had no idea. But that was the rule in their house. So
hey, they're bourbon their way, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's what we try to say.
What was your first bourbon?
Kelly, what do you say?
Mine was simply my 21st birthday, a gifting from the boyfriend, the traditional Maker's Mark. I would pick that because I'm the brand manager. I'm visual, and I was really young. I was looking at the
branding,
the dripping,
yeah.
the wax.
Oh, the wax. There we go.
The looks at first, and later developed a taste.
A great weeded bourbon too. A lot of people would say that's it. So you guys are actually rebranding while we speak, right? You're fixing to rebrand your stuff. And I've seen the rebranding. I think you guys are going to do great with that. It's what you would think John Wayne would have in a saddlebag when he's in one of his movies, a nice tall bottle, right? Almost dark Texas rich color to it. I think you guys are hit the mark with that. And then you got an American hero on your bottle. How can that not sell? How could you not be a bourbon drinker and buy some of this bourbon with a great story? Like every great bourbon has a story, right? Yes. So I appreciate you guys letting me come in today and take a peek inside your guys' distillery, hear your stories. I think you guys are going to hit a home run with this and be one of the great Texas bourbons out there. I think you can compete with any of the other big boys out there in the market in Texas, even with the Kentucky bourbons. And that's saying something. They've been around for
something.
That's
saying something.
I think it's good juice, and to me, a good bourbon's a good bourbon. Some people might differ, but my palate's my palate, your palate's your palate, and Kelly's palate's her palate, and that's how it is. But I still think it's a great bourbon, and I would sit down by my fire with my dog Woodrow and drink it.
That's saying something. There you go.
So everybody, you're going to see me on down to Bourbon Road. I want to thank you guys. Where can we find you on social media?
Kiepersol, Texas.
Kiepersol, Texas.
Kiepersol on Instagram, on Facebook,
yes.
on Twitter.
Yes.
Yep.
And your website.
And our website. Absolutely.
So stop by, see them here. They're about 15 miles outside of Tyler, Texas. It's worth, if you're in Texas, it's worth the drive to come over from Louisiana, or if you're in Dallas for a Cowboys game, or you're down in Austin, take that drive over, come by and see them.
We've got a 15-room inn. You can come stay with us.
Hey, that's even better right there. And they got a winery for the wife.
And they can come see Birdie Mae.
Or the husband, if he doesn't drink bourbon, he drinks wine. Either way around, I don't care how you do it. Come drink some bourbon with them. I will see you down the Bourbon Road. You'll next hear from me. I think I'll be in Little Rock in a couple days. We're doing another interview there, and we'll see you down the Bourbon Road.
Cheers.
Well, Mike, that was a great interview. I mean, Marnell did an awesome job for filling in. I think very interesting. So tell me, they've got two bourbons.
Yep, one at 90 proof, one at 100 proof.
Same bourbon, just two different proof expressions.
Yep.
And your favorite was? I
think the 90 was great. It's got a sweetness to it. It's a 4 grain. It's a beautiful expression of bourbon. She actually asked me off air, now tell me the truth. What do you really think? And I was like, if you knew me, or if you listened about me, or you read what I wrote and stuff, I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm not going to lie to you. And I thought it was a great bourbon. Something I could sit down and drink with you, or I could sit down by my fire and talk to a Woodrow and drink it.
Good deal. Well, yeah. Well, that was great. So sorry you didn't find any Weller. But it sounds like you found Jimmy's, and that was good stuff.
It was. It was great. And I got to spend some more time with my son, and Marnell was great. She gave my son 2 bottles as gifts. I thought she thought it was pretty neat that he was works on B-52s. That airplane's been around almost as long as the plane that Jimmy flew. So they got a little camaraderie there, I think.
Sure.
Now, Jimmy's passed on last year. Yeah, we got on down the Bourbon Road back to my son's house. We spent a couple more days with him. We brought him a whole bunch of bottles of bourbon, which was probably good because he can't get too much down there. And he's a big Blanton's fan.
Yeah.
I mean, you just live right down the road from Buffalo Trace, so it's pretty easy for me and you to pick up some Blantons. So I brought him some Blantons and some other bottles that I thought he'd like. And me and Vivian got back on the road, and we were back on our way back up to Kentucky.
All right. Well, Mike, we've got one more distillery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So out of 6, this is the final one.
It'll be the final one, yeah.
And who is it?
Well, it's what we're sipping on right now. It's Rocktown Distillery out of Little Rock, Arkansas. A great distillery is right downtown. If you fly into Arkansas, into Little Rock or into Arkansas, and you like, man, I got a little time to burn downtown, stop by and see them at Rocktown. They make some good juice. Jim, you already drank all yours. I got a whole.
I need a little bit more because I tell you what, one of the things I like doing is when your glass is empty, when you sip that last little bit, go ahead and nose it again, nose the glass. And man, this is a lot of caramel.
Oh yeah.
A lot of caramel, butterscotch.
It's actually opened up.
Yeah.
A lot.
Quite a bit.
As we've been sitting here talking and stuff. Their DSP is DSP AR 15001. So they say they're the first legal distillery in the state of Arkansas since Prohibition. I don't know if that's right or not. And I wish maybe we'll reach out to Michael Veach and ask him and see if he can get us a little bourbon history or distillery history on Arkansas. But Phil Brandon, he's the one that started that brand there, and he was just a businessman and the Intel technology. I think he worked for Autel, and he got laid off, and he needed something to do, so he started himself a distillery.
That's what you do, right? When you get bored, you start a distillery.
Now, 2 of these distilleries, 7-3 and Rocktown, were both helped by Dave Pickerel.
Okay. The late Dave Pickerel.
The late, yeah.
Yeah.
He helped them start. He's helped start many distilleries,
Sure.
But a legend, I would think, in the distillery game.
Absolutely.
So they have his legacy with them.
All right. Well, let's listen to your interview with Rocktown.
Hey, this is Big Chief from the Bourbon Road, and we left Shreveport, Louisiana this morning, and we're moving on down the Bourbon Road. We're heading back home to Kentucky today, but we thought we would take a chance and stop by Rocktown Distillery in Little Rock, Arkansas, and see what they're distilling, see what they got for us. And luckily enough, they let us in their doors this morning. So we're in here, and I'm with
Andrew Wingfield. I'm the one of 2 national brand ambassadors for Rocktown Distillery.
So Rocktown Distillery, they started in 2010 with Phil, their owner. It's all your own juice, nothing sourced here.
Right. Yeah. All of we take a lot of pride in our whiskey. It's grain to glass. So we have partnered with local Arkansas farmers. They grow corn, wheat, barley, rye, and we take those ingredients. We have a mill here on site. We mill it up, we mash it, ferment it, distill it, and age it all on site here at Rocktown.
And you guys' DSP number is DSP Arkansas 15001.
That's right. Yeah.
So you are number 1 distillery here in
Absolutely.
Kentucky, or in Arkansas.
We're the first legal distillery in Arkansas since Prohibition.
That's pretty awesome. You took us through your warehouse and back to your stills and stuff, and you put all your juice in 53, 25, and 15 gallon barrels.
That's right. So we have a cooperage here in Arkansas. It's in Hot Springs. It's called the Gibbs Brothers Cooperage. And we love those guys. We use their barrels. They only make 15 gallon barrels though. So we put a lot of our experimental whiskeys into that size barrel, but we also have 25 and 53 gallon barrels. Some of those we get from Independent Stave and Kelvin and McGinnis.
And you guys are like a true craft distillery. So you're putting about 4 barrels per week.
Right. About 200 gallons of whiskey per week. So,
and you got Vendome steel, and then you got a vertical column with that.
Yeah. We have a 250 gallon copper pot still made by Vendome.
So in 2018, you guys moved into this new building here. It's an old Cadillac dealership.
That's right.
Got a lot of history here in Arkansas. What's the history behind the name Rocktown?
Phil Brandon is the man who started Rocktown Distillery. He's Little Rock born and raised. So Rocktown is a name that he came up with to emphasize where this whiskey comes from, where it's produced, and it's Rocktown. It's Little Rock, and we're also big fans of rock and roll.
And that is no joke. I walk into the warehouse and you guys are in there, got ZZ Top just blaring to the barrels. They're getting to hear that music. Maybe that vibration's helping it go in and outside of the wood. And I noticed when we walked in, before we came in, one of the employees was opening up the windows to the warehouse to let some fresh air and stuff in.
That's right. Yeah.
So is that room temperature controlled or?
So the barrel house we have an AC and heater in that room, but only because we host events in there. We don't climate control it most of the time.
So she's just open up windows, you don't have no event there today. So
nope.
I think it's like 35 or 36 degrees out today.
Yeah, it's super cold today. Or it's super cold for us. We're not too far away from having a snow, but we don't mess with the temperature in the barrel house 99% of the time because we want those climate changes. We want it to be really, really humid and hot in the summertime, and then in the cold or the winter be really dry and cold.
So one of your mash bills is a sour mash, and everything else is a sweet mash, though.
Correct.
So what do you got for me today? You got some pretty special juice.
All right. So today I thought we would try our single barrel reserve. This is a cask strength single barrel version of our flagship Arkansas bourbon whiskey. It's 82% corn, it's 9% wheat, and 9% malted barley.
Well, let's taste this.
Yeah. Cheers.
I get a little on the nose. I get a little, maybe some dried fruits.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely get that vanilla.
Absolutely. Big caramel.
Wow.
Some nutmeg, little cinnamon, baking spices.
I get all that. I got some nutmeg on there. Yeah. Peppery on the back end though.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't dry my mouth out or anything like that. It does leave you wanting more, like any good bourbon should, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, what proof is this? You said about 117 proof?
Yeah, there are, all these single barrels at cask strength are a little bit different. They typically come out 118 to 120. This one is, around 117. So it's a full flavor bourbon whiskey. And this is the one that put us on the map. In 2015, this won U.S. Micro Whiskey of the Year in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible.
Wow, that's a great whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So here, whenever you guys, what do you? Somebody comes on off the Bourbon Road and they want to take a tour. What do you guys usually take somebody through?
So we like to take them through the beginning of our distillery here in Arkansas. We tell Phil's story. Phil did not come from bourbon makers. He was actually in telecom, and he worked at Altel, which was headquartered here in Little Rock. Well, Verizon comes in and they buy Altel, and they laid off a bunch of the staff, and they told him that he could keep his job, but he'd have to move to New Jersey. But he's Little Rock born and raised, so he doesn't want to move to New Jersey. So, he tells them where they can stick it and quits. So at that time, he's faced with unemployment. And, he probably does what a lot of us do when faced with unemployment, which is turn to alcohol. So, during that time, he's drinking a lot of bourbon, a lot of whiskey, really, really liking it. And looking at the map of bourbon distilleries in the U.S., finds that there is not one in Arkansas, his home state. So, a lot of people would look at that problem and say, boy, it'd be nice if somebody built a distillery in Arkansas. But Phil looks at that problem and says, why not me? Why can't I do it? So he got the state to give him the very first distilling permit ever issued since Prohibition.
And we're in the heart of the Bible Belt, right?
Yeah.
And that must have been some chore to get Arkansas to say, okay, yeah, this is a good idea.
Yeah. I imagine it probably was.
And I'm sure some people thought, man, that's a bad idea. We don't need no more liquor in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
But you got the corn here, right?
That's right.
You got the rye, you got the wheat.
Rye actually was not grown commercially in Arkansas until we decided to make a rye whiskey. So we contracted the first plot of commercially grown rye in the state in order to make our rye whiskey. So like we've got a straight rye whiskey. We also have a 4-grain sour mash bourbon that includes rye in the mash bill. So I think that because no one else is using that grain and nobody else is sourcing 100% of their whiskey grain from Arkansas, in the same way that wine has a certain terroir, like grapes from certain regions have different flavors. I think whiskey has the same kind of thing. So because nobody else is using those grains, it has a really, really unique quality that is not found in any other whiskey.
Yeah, as I was telling you earlier, I think when I think of Arkansas and I think of whiskey, I think of the Arkansas River. I think of Jim Bowie. I think of Daniel Boone.
Right.
I think of those frontiersmen that came here from the East, from Kentucky, from Tennessee. And what do they bring with them, or what do they want? They want some whiskey, and I think of riverboat whiskey. I think of bourbon. Those guys, they want that flavor. They want that same thing they had back at home or where they started out. And they're out here being frontiersmen, and you guys are just taking it a step further. The first legal distillery here,
right,
in Arkansas, and man, you guys did an outstanding job with this.
Well, thanks.
How many years has this set in the barrel?
Our whiskeys they're typically, straight 2 years, 2 to 4 years. We do have a bottled in bond, regular release bottled in bond coming out. We've done limited release bottled in bond whiskeys. We did a bourbon and we did a rye, and our bottled in bond bourbon got a 92 in Whiskey Advocate magazine,
which is amazing, right?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So like we're finally at a point where we are going to be able to offer a regular release bottled in bond bourbon, which is a huge milestone for us.
I think you guys are doing great here and stuff.
Thanks.
What other states are you guys in besides Arkansas right now?
We have active distributors in 16 other states. You could probably find our product on the shelf in 22 states. We're in Canada, we're in the UK, Germany, Taiwan. So we got a pretty far reach for a craft distillery.
And what's the future look like for you?
Oh gosh, we're just gonna keep producing and focus on making great products, and maybe eventually we'll expand a little bit further. And
we got listeners in Australia, and I'm sure I guarantee you there's a guy out there named Jacob Bell. He's going to ask me, how do I get Rocktown in Australia?
In Australia, I am not the one to answer that question.
Well, you're the brand ambassador, though.
Yeah. Well, get on a plane and fly into Hillary Clinton Airport here in Little Rock. Come on over to the distillery. We'll get you a bottle. But we're not looking to overextend ourselves. I mean, we probably are just we're gonna focus on being the best that we can in the places where we're already available for now.
So are you in Kentucky right now?
No,
not in Kentucky.
No.
Is that plans to get your product into Kentucky?
Maybe we'll see how many of your listeners call up their local distributors and ask, if they can bring Rocktown in. We'll see how it goes.
Well, we want our listeners to come by here if they're out on the Bourbon Road. That's great. We want people to say, hey, I'm outside of the state of Kentucky and I'm driving down the road and I got to go through Little Rock, or I'm in Little Rock for a day for business. There is a distillery here and they got some great bourbon.
That's right.
And you should come try it. That's what I would say as the big chief is, hey, come by and check this place out. They got a nice bar. No food here?
No, we don't do food. We really don't want to get wrapped up in that. We've got a lot of great local restaurants right here on our street within walking distance. So we're gonna do one thing really well is we're gonna make spirits and we're gonna make cocktails with those spirits.
But they still can come out here and get a bottle of bourbon and take it home with them. Yeah, package it up, take it home on an airplane, or you driving on down the road. Take a whole case with you.
Yeah, whatever you want. We love having people here. We offer tours, tastings. We love to educate people on whiskey and answer their questions. So,
and where can our listeners find you guys on social media?
At Rocktown Distill is our Instagram handle, and of course, Facebook is Rocktown Distillery.
And what about you? What if they want to talk to you?
If they want to talk to me, I'm on Facebook as Rocktown Wings, and that's also my Instagram handle.
And you're the man to answer any questions about, hey, how do I get this into my state?
Absolutely.
If we got some state out there saying, hey, I think we need to have Rocktown in our state.
Yeah, I'm the man to answer that question. If I don't know the answer, I'll just go ask Phil and he'll tell me. So
that's good salesmanship. Well, we're going to sip on a little bit more of this whiskey right here. This is our last stop on this episode right here. It's been a great trip. Me and my wife, Vivian, we're going to head back to Kentucky tonight. Thanks for having us in.
Absolutely.
To Rocktown.
Anytime, man.
Loved it. I'll see you on down the Bourbon Road.
Bye-bye.
Well, Mike, I really enjoyed that a lot. And you know what else I'm enjoying? This Rocktown.
Well, I knew you were going to enjoy it. It's rye whiskey. I think you're trying to get me to be a rye whiskey drinker or a rye drinker. And, I love it, but I still love my wheats.
I almost converted Randy back in the day. But anyway, this is turning real butterscotchy. I'm getting a little bit of wintergreen in it now. I have to say that, it's almost like it did spend maybe too much time in the barrel, but it gives it character. It gives it a lot of character, and it's not like anything else I've had before. I would highly recommend somebody try this Rocktown single barrel proof rye. It's a treat.
I think, that's a lot of people that stick with just brands that they've known forever, or the very popular brands or the big brands. I think these new distilleries, artisan distilleries, are starting to put out some great juice, and you're missing out if you won't pick it up or try it.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're missing.
Well, it's hard to pass this one by when it's on the shelf, I imagine. It's a beautiful bottle in a beautiful tube. Their artwork is just phenomenal.
And every one of their bottles is like that.
Yeah.
It's in a tube, and they really are trying to be a better distillery. They've moved locations out into this old Cadillac dealership, and when I walked in there, ZZ Top is just into their rick house or the warehouse. ZZ Top's just blaring, and it's thumping to those. So I'm sure that the vibrations moving that whiskey in there a little bit. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
In and out of that barrel. I thought that was pretty cool. And it was nice of Andrew, their brand ambassador, to sit down with me. Phil was out on a business trip, and hopefully if we're down there, we could sit down with him and talk some more.
Well, I'm going to shoot Andrew a message. I think I'm going to let him know how appreciative I am of getting this bottle sent out to me. It's something I'm going to sip on, and I'm going to share with others, and I really like it. It's very good. Mike, your trip was epic, to say the least. I think it was a good trip. I think you had how many miles was it again?
2,200.
2,200 miles, 33 hours, 6 distilleries, 7 states.
That's a good trip.
I think I'd like to do something like that sometime. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I think most people, if you're out there, you're from Kentucky, and you do distillery tours here, or if you're from that state that we went to a distillery in, or even if you not, find a distillery in your state and go visit them. They might shock you.
Yeah.
But me and Vivian had a great time. All the distilleries were very open and transparent with us. Beautiful expressions of whiskey. I don't know if I'd have a favorite at all of them. I'm a Texas boy, so Marnell there at the distillery at Kiepersol, I loved how they treated my family like gold. They fed us lunch out there, gave us some whiskey. They took us through their winery. They were just great people, but everybody was the same. Everybody opened their doors, embraced us, embraced our podcast, and I love that. So I'd like to say thank you to all of them. And I'd like to say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Absolutely. This was our first 2-part podcast, but next week we'll get back to a 1-part podcast.
1 part. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So this is releasing on Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Bourbon Road, and we're going to spend a little time with family.
Make sure you tune in next week. We do have a special guest next week, though.
We do.
And you do not want to miss him. He's very knowledgeable in the bourbon world. To me, he's a legend. So tune in.
Cheers, Mike. Ho, ho, ho.
Cheers.
We do appreciate all of our listeners, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us here on the Bourbon Road. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, we would appreciate if you'd subscribe and rate us a 5-star with a review on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Bourbon Road. That way you'll be kept in the loop on all the Bourbon Road happenings. You can also visit our website at thebourbonroad.com to read our blog, listen to the show, or reach out to us directly. We always welcome comments or suggestions, and if you have an idea for a particular guest or topic, be sure to let us know. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.